fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
All right, welcome back. You are in the House of Mystery, and we are talking with authors that have contributed short stories to the new Larceny and Last Chances anthologies. 22 stories of mystery and suspense, and it's a Superior Shores Anthology, and it's book 4. Joining us now, we've got K.M. Rockwood. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So now your story is called The Constellation Necklace.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. What's the premise of that story?
The premise of that, it's a classic short story of a piece of jewelry that is to be stolen and replaced with an imitation. And in this case, it's a young girl who was working as a personal assistant to a wealthy friend who was being convinced by her boyfriend that she should replace the necklace with an imitation so they can sell it and run off together.
Now, have you been doing a lot of short stories in your history? Have you got a lot of short stories behind you?
Yes, I have a fair number. Unfortunately, I'm not that well organized. I've lost track of the number.
So do you like writing in the kind of this mystery crime sort of genre?
Yes, I tend to write in the mystery. Every once in a while, I stray over into fantasy or horror, but generally speaking, crime mystery is my field.
And where do you get your inspiration from?
The characters just kind of show up, and they insist that they have a story to be told and that I have to tell their story. Sometimes I feel like I'm a stenographer.
You're being held captive?
Yes, yes. And they do not do what I think they should do. They do what they want to do.
Well, I was going to ask, do they surprise you? Have they ever surprised you so much that they've taken the total plot of the story totally off the rails?
Oh, definitely. The first novel I wrote, which shall remain in a drawer quite deservedly, was a mystery. And when I reached the end, I realized I had the wrong person down as the murderer. It was really somebody else.
They were a trickster.
Yeah, well, that's what the characters did to me. They fooled me the entire time.
And do you picture your characters as well as hear them?
To a certain extent. Mostly, though, it's a voice in my head.
They don't start telling you how to do weird things, do they, or anything like that?
In fiction, they certainly do, yes.
Oh, they do, yeah.
However, it doesn't stray into real life.
Yeah, well, that's good. I'm just making sure, you know.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's good, too, yes.
Yeah, you don't wake up and inside of the bed there's a shovel and some bloody shoes or something.
No.
Right? You know? No, okay, that's good. How much can you control these characters then? Or how much do you, because you said like you kind of write a lot of it out from how you hear it. Do you get to add any changes to the characters or anything?
Every once in a while, but there have been cases where I just have lost control and just stopped the project because I don't like where it's going.
That's really interesting. I guess you are writing just as pure entertainment, right? Like you don't set out any sort of meaning or plot like that.
Well, to tell the truth, one of the things I like to do with my writing is to give a voice to people in society who generally don't have a voice. So many of my characters are people who you wouldn't ordinarily think of as being protagonists in stories and things.
Okay, so there is sort of a little bit of a subtext in that itself, right?
Yes. For instance, one of my early stories was a woman whose children were in foster care, and she was trying hard to get them back, but she was a drug addict and having difficulty, and she came to the realization that her children were actually better off in the foster home who wanted to adopt them. So she rather sadly let them go.
Well, what do you hope that a reader takes away from the story?
Just a little bit of thinking about how different people feel and how our society in general works.
What do you get out of the story, do you think? Like, what does it do for you?
A great deal of satisfaction. I thoroughly enjoy it, and I'm very pleased with it during the entire process. But, when I see a piece finished, especially if I can get it published, which doesn't always happen, it gives me a great deal of satisfaction.
How do you get into the mindset of these characters who are kind of outside the norm? Do you do a lot of research? Is this all imagination? How does that happen?
Well, of course, there's a lot of research involved when I come up with a story, but in general, they just appear, and they're more, like I say, more or less dictating to me what I should be doing. very distinctive characters. They're certainly not all the same person.
Do you think about violence when you write this book? Do you think about how you portray violence in the stories?
I do. I don't have a lot of violence. I'm not a violent person myself, and I don't see violence as a good way to for someone to reach their ends. So, of course, a certain amount of violence occurs, but I don't enjoy writing the violence, and I don't make a big deal about it.
Do you like writing the bad guy, the bad character, or the evil in a story?
Very few people are all that evil. You know, I mean, a lot of my characters, like the one in this story particularly, kind of vacillate between being a good person and a bad person. Nobody's completely one or the other.
But do you find it difficult or challenging, I guess I should say, to have the reader understand that? Because it is a short story. Like in a novel, right, you've got a lot of time and you can lay out, you know, your bad person, for instance, or you're the one that's done the wrong thing. You can kind of lay out a lot of what they've been through. Like, you know, maybe they had a bad life, or what they think is right or wrong and stuff like that. The challenges in that. But how do you do it in a short story so that people can kind of get it?
Well, you try very hard to pick up some details that show what's going on. And to a certain extent, you use stereotypes. Most stereotypes do have a basis in reality. You know, if you start out with a homeless veteran with post-traumatic stress syndrome, you have introduced an entire background without having to say much.
What do you find the most difficult character for you to write?
That's a good question, because, like I say, they just kind of appear. The ones who are not cooperating with me and who are demanding, especially demanding in terms of violence or an evil intent, are the ones that I find difficult to write, and sometimes I just drop those projects.
That's interesting, hey? So you can just walk away from it. It doesn't, you know, oh, wow.
Goodbye, come back if you're feeling more cooperative later.
Well, I'm wondering, you have a very varied background when it comes to work. Are you pulling from that background in creating your characters and in creating your stories?
Oh, definitely. You know, and I have a whole network of people who, you know, basically convicted criminals who give me background and things, and they read all of my stuff, and they tend to say, "Oh, yeah, you get it. That's me." You know, I don't write any one individual person, but I certainly draw from a whole bunch of different people, from relatives and friends and coworkers.
So what happens to these characters, like when you're finished the story's out, gets published, and then you're moving on to the next story? Do those characters just go away?
No, they're usually wandering around still, and in many cases they show up and want to be in another story again.
Sounds like you need protection.
Sometimes I agree with you. Except I get along with most, you know, I feel safe with most of my characters.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite? Is there one that sticks out from all the characters you've written that you kind of go, wow, this is like someone you could communicate with?
Well, there's one that I'm working on right now, a short story collection. Her name is Miss Agnes Grayling, and she is an elderly lady who lives in a Victorian mansion, which is decaying, and the mansion has been condemned to make room for a parking lot for a casino. And she is trying to figure out how to deal with this, and she discovers a method of dealing with it, and she starts killing the people who are interfering with her lifestyle.
Okay, there you go. And so what about her makes you like her so much?
I like her attitude. You know, I mean, she's not going to let anybody push her around. She's actually a very proper lady and tries very hard to live by her own, what she calls her Christian principles. She would give you the shirt off her back, so to speak, if necessary, but she feels like she's being pushed around, so she's pushing back. She's discovered a way to deal with some of these people who are causing her problems, and she's going to continue doing it.
Oh, there you go. Go for it. You go, girl. Let's talk about where people find you. Do you like to interact with readers at all? Do you do social media? Do you do a website?
Yes, I have a blog, or I participate in a blog. It's a multi-author blog, and I do have a Facebook, and I've got a website.
And your website, what's the address so people can get it?
kmrockwood.com.
Of course, now we're going to have that up along with the anthology, and I'll tell you, good luck with everything. We hope it goes well, and really enjoyed having you here. So, K.M. Rockwood, thank you for being here.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Thanks, Cam.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.